Welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. We are taking a brief holiday before starting season 2 of the podcast. This episode was previously released, but we think you will enjoy listening again, or maybe you're hearing it for the first time. We will be back in September with our first anniversary episode.
As always, we would appreciate if you would follow, rate, and review the podcast so more people can find us. Even better, share your favorite episode with a friend. If you are a fan of the podcast, please consider becoming a patron through Patreon. Listener support means that we can continue to make the show. We have no idea what's going on, but welcome back.
Right.
Welcome to Barnyard Language. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language. Honest talk about running farms and raising families.
In case your kids haven't already learned all the swears from being in the barn, it might be a good idea to put on some headphones or turn down the volume.
Oh, Arlene, I saw your husband join the Facebook group and didn't agree to the rules. So you're responsible for him.
He's probably never joined a Facebook group.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He's like, I joined the group. Is that okay? I was like, yeah, I haven't started to talk about you yet. So
yeah. And your daughter followed us on Instagram. So I'll try to, limit what we say about her over
actually,
there.
She said to me the other day, do you like any feedback on the Instagram? I was like, okay, sure. She's 15. Yeah. And she's like, it kind of looks like a mom's Instagram. I'm like, well, that's what it is, honey.
Success. Tell her that's what I was aiming for.
Yeah. So, well, you could clean it up a little if you wanted.
Clean what up? What is
less mom? I don't know.
Well, I'm interested to hear what she thinks.
Because I think a teen Instagram is more curated, right? Because so her Snapchat is more unfiltered, where Instagram is the best shots.
Which cracks me up, because to me, it's the whole point of the Instagram is to be really honest.
Unfiltered.
And
yeah. Just depends what you're using each platform for, I
guess.
Welcome back, everyone, to Barnyard Language. Thank you for joining us again. At the time that we're recording, we're getting to the end of summer, and we're starting to get to the point where maybe our kids will leave our houses and go back to school. Katie, what's happening on your farm these days?
My kids have left the house. Both of our children are back in preschool. Thank heavens. Hopefully it's safe for them to be there. But, for as long as it seems safe, I'm going to send them so that I can work and farm and do all that. Other than that, just getting ramped up for fall, getting ready to start, putting the rams back in. And I saw the bull's looking a little excited these days, so he's getting back to work. Although we had the vet out last week, and we're going to have a number of calves around Christmas time. So that's super fun, living somewhere where it snows and it gets to 30 below, and yeah, good times. And
did you get away on any vacation this year? I know that that's a tricky word with both kids and farms, but did you actually get to leave the property?
We went to a 4-day tractor show in Minnesota.
Ooh.
With my husband, both kids, my in-laws, our 12-year-old niece, and stayed in a beautiful Airbnb that we did not know was directly upstairs from a massage studio that was open for paying customers, a few feet below the hardwood floors. It was not. It is a gorgeous space for, a girls' weekend, a romantic weekend away, perhaps. Not so much with a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. And it was on a working farm. Jim was so proud of himself. He booked it. He found it himself, and he booked it himself. And he goes, I found us this great Airbnb. It's on a sheep farm. Cool.
That's a novelty.
Cool. Yeah. But it was beautiful.
So this sounds more like a trip than a vacation, for sure.
Well, the boy child calls it cation, but now he's pretty sure that a cation only involves tractors. So he's pretty excited. He heard we might go to a cation on Sunday again this week. I did get a little time off this past week. I had a friend who passed away on Sunday night, actually, of colon cancer at 42. And so I was incredibly thankful to be able to go and spend some time sort of sitting vigil with, friends and family, and filling the house with a lot of laughter and love, because the mourning part can be done on your own, but the celebration of life needs to happen before the person passes away. And he was already not really responsive, but, hospice was assuring us that he could hear us. So I figured the rowdier it was, the better, because that's how he lived. And I figured that's probably what he wanted to hear in the last amount of time. So that was really, really important to get to connect with the community like that.
Yeah, that sounds like
it's like a total bummer.
Sending someone off. That's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what living in life is about, right? It also includes loss, and to be able to spend time with someone in their final days is amazing.
Well, and just to realize how much, him getting sick like that at 42, the getting sick is tragic. When you get to the end of an illness like that, the passing is not tragic. He wasn't going to get better. There wasn't, a last minute miracle coming. And at that point, it's really a relief for everyone involved to have it finished, because it's just painful for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so it's really a relief to be done with it. So Arlene, what have your family farm been up to?
Well, like I said, we're at the time we're recording, we're in our final few days of the summer holiday that I guess started in April when they closed schools again. So, I mean, we were doing virtual school for a couple of months there, and then the kids have been home since our spring break. So we did actually get away at one point in the summer. We've had the lucky chance because of border closures. So not great for our American friends, but lots of cottages in our area are owned by Americans who, because of the border closures, couldn't get here to use them. So the last 2 summers, actually, we've been able to rent a cottage that's under an hour away. So that's kind of ideal for us. So we could get up to the lake and get away from the farm, but be close enough for those emergency phone calls if, a cow needed help or we need to get back for some chores. We've had good luck with summer students and our regular employees to be able to cover for us. So that's been nice. And farm wise, one of our summer students will be going back to school. So I'll be back to milking in the mornings before school starts. And then corn silage is getting close. It got tested yesterday and we're probably a week or so away from starting silage. So our custom operator will be doing the tractor driving and hauling of all of that, but that means getting some of the crops in, which is always nice to see it come off the field and be put away for winter.
Yeah, I feel like the power of community is never stronger than when you're trying to find somebody to cover the farm while you get away for a couple days. Or
absolutely. My husband and I've been lucky enough to go on a couple of holidays, just the two of us. And it always feels like such a team effort by the time you find someone to look after the kids and the farm and all the different chores, you realize how many people it takes to replace you.
Well, and just, if you have livestock, the quality of text messages you tend to get from anyone who's holding down the fort while you're gone. I know a few years ago.
Does this look okay?
Yeah. We were at a farm convention a few years ago and I got a series of very in-depth text messages and photos from the neighbor who was holding down the fort here, because he grew up on a dairy farm, so he knows about cattle, but a sheep with a prolapse was a new and different thing for him. And trying to talk him through that. And I finally just sent him the vet's number and just said, just call Dr. Amanda. Just make this easier on everybody, buddy. This is not something I'm going to be able to talk you through via text message.
Yeah, that's right.
So our guest today is Natasha Nichols, who is the founder and director of the We Sow, We Grow urban farming project in Chicago. So thank you for joining us, Natasha. We're super excited to have you here with us.
So Natasha, we start off with each of our guests with the same question, and this can cover both family, business, projects that you're working on. So our first question is, what are you growing?
I'm going to need you all to go upstairs while I do this interview, please. Don't on me. Let's go.
I always feel bad when I laugh at somebody else's kids being sassy.
Oh, whatever. I don't feel bad about it at all.
Well, I don't want them to think I support them.
I did the
So if they're still there, you listen to your mother.
I did I loop around the house earlier, was like, I'm going upstairs. Do you need anything? Do you need anything? Do you need anything? Don't interrupt me.
That is pretty loaded. We are growing quite a bit here in the city of Chicago. Our nonprofit is growing, and we are looking to add more farmland and an actual headquarters to our family. It's a lot like birthing a new baby, and just a little bit less painful, but just as tedious and preparation loaded as having a new baby. And I'm learning a lot about the way the city of Chicago works, and a lot about how emails often go unanswered when it comes to city officials. So you have to become the squeaky wheel. And the same way that I don't like reminding people in my house to do things or that I need things, it's probably 100-fold with city officials. The fun thing about growing the farmland is we'll be able to provide way more food to the community and to neighborhoods surrounding us. And we'll also be able to do a lot more experimentation with what we're growing and how we're growing it to see what fits the way we're growing best. So we try to do circular economy of standard model, which means, we're trying to get as close to zero waste as possible. It's not always feasible, so we remind people of that, and we're growing our understanding with that as well. As far as business goes, I think I'm just growing my understanding as a business person and knowing that I cannot do everything alone. It's a really big lesson I learned in the last 3 years, and my family is not growing at all.
Well, probably taller.
Yeah, yeah, my two oldest children are taller than me now, and my almost 13-year-old loves the fact that she can look down into my eyes instead of up into my eyes. So that's always a fun thing. And they're enjoying seeing what's happening with the farm and what new things we're doing, even though they're part of the farm chore group and not necessarily volunteers like everyone else who comes through. They have to help out there, but that's about it. It's busy around here when everybody else kind of gets into the mode of settling down. We're ramping up to do a lot of things.
Sure. What ages are your children?
21. We will have a 13-year-old this month, and later this year we will have a set of 11-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Fun times.
Natasha, what did you know about growing food when you started, or growing anything, I guess?
What did I know about growing things before I started the nonprofit?
Yep.
Not a lot. I knew what I gleaned from often visiting grandparents and aunts and uncles in the South, in Memphis, Tennessee, and Mississippi. But I also learned quite a bit working directly with the Illinois Farm Bureau and the Illinois Farm Families program that they had in 2013. And that kind of ignited a desire to kind of get closer to my food and learning about things and, growing stuff so that we didn't have to spend everything in the grocery store. It started with chickens, believe it or not. My husband wanting to have eggs, but where we lived originally, we wouldn't have been able to have chickens with where we lived in the city. There just wasn't any backyard space. But when we moved to our current neighborhood, we have a backyard, and then there was all the space for the farm that we have now, and we were able to get chickens and everything, and it just kind of went from there. And then I became more focused on the technical aspects of it. So I connected with the University of Illinois Extension Program and became certified in several areas. So I'm a master urban farmer and a master gardener. And I'm looking to go back actually to get some more certifications and learning under, because you never stop learning when you're in this aspect, right? Because things change, and the ways that you grow things change, and the ways that information comes down changes. So yeah, it's all about me being inquisitive and always curious, and also being just a little bit stubborn.
That's a huge asset in farming.
To do this.
Yeah. And I feel like that education is so important, because when you start, you don't know what you don't know yet. And then it's like every one thing you get interested in unfolds into 20 more. And I feel like anyone who's ever had chickens knows they're a gateway drug, and you start with 3 hens, and then pretty soon. You've got a whole
chicken
urban
math
farm.
is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah. Chicken math is ridiculous. And I always try to tell people that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get your hens, before you know it, your spouse is looking at you like you're crazy because you're bringing them onto your homestead in little boxes because Tractor Supply or McMurray Hatchery had a sale. And
Mm-hmm.
you saw a breed that you've been looking at for the last 2 years, and you just gotta have it. So that's what happens.
And they start off so tiny and cute.
Yes.
I mean, they don't take up any space.
Yes. And then they become very, very demanding. And they start walking up to your front door, your back door, because you have not come out on the time at the time that they wanted you to come to feed them their snacks.
They start, just walking into your house, which happens here a lot.
Now we do not have that because of the way that our house is set up. But I guarantee you, if I lived on an actual farm, we would have the back door open all the time, and they'd probably come and visit us.
Yeah.
Which property are you farming right now, Natasha?
We are currently on a 1/4 acre, but we're looking to add another 1/2 acre to what we have. And 1/4 acres in the city are kind of funky because an entire home can take up a 1/4 acre of space wise, with the backyard, garage, and the building. So we're currently on a space that would hold 2 buildings, and we're farming on that.
Natasha, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little more about the headquarters that you guys are working on obtaining.
Ooh, that is.
Or is it top secret still?
It's not top secret. It's a bit of a dream. And I think folks have to understand that I was born in 1980 in order to understand this reference. And my dream,
I know what it's going to be, I bet. I was born in 81.
My dream is to house our headquarters in a fire station. We are not fighting ghosts or anything, but we are definitely going to make great use of the fire pole in the headquarters. We have put in the paperwork needed to acquire the building. It is not ours yet, but we are hopeful that we can get some sort of campaign started to help the city realize what an asset it would be if we were housed there. So the reason that I want to do a firehouse, number one, it's vacant. We have 3 vacant firehouses in our neighborhood because a new fire station was built to house all 3 of the firehouses and the firefighters and their trucks and everything. So they have no use for those 3 buildings anymore. And when you think about a firehouse, it's a place of safety. It's somewhere that you go for help, and a space that you can go to be directed wherever you need to be if you have a question. And when it comes to food, I realize that a lot of people are often shy about the need of food and the hunger that they may have. And they don't necessarily want to tell people that they are having problems accessing food or getting enough food to feed their families. And we want to be that beacon for them. It's also a place that comes readily available with a kitchen and learning space, and we don't have to reinvent anything. And it's a way to be sustainable, right? We're repurposing a vacant building in our neighborhood for something else, and we don't have to tear anything down or build anything up at all. So it helps save with our overhead. And it's just, it's cool. Who else can say that they're out of a firehouse, right? Out of an old firehouse.
Sure.
And it's just perfect. And there are lots of dreams that I can see coming to fruition there.
Fire pole. I'm picturing either people sliding down it or plants growing up it. What is your vision? I don't think you can do both.
When we first open, because we are a nonprofit, we're still, we depend a lot on donors to help us fund our mission. And we're thinking about, when we open, having a fundraiser where people can pay to slide down the fire pole. And then afterwards, we can use it for some decoration, for some ivy or pothos or
grapes or something.
Philodendron. I don't know about having anything edible growing up the fact. God, my germaphobe stuff goes into
Sure. Yeah.
goes into play with that. But I mean, obviously it'd be sanitized, but
Mhm.
just optics.
Well,
But yeah,
I feel like you'd have to rig one of the kids up with like a rappelling harness to try and
right?
harvest anything that's, 10 feet off the ground on a fire pole. Like, here, go
Absolutely.
get those zucchini, kid. You'll be fine. Sure, it can hold your weight.
Pumpkins hanging
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
it and hopefully not dropping off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, before they ripen. So tell us a bit more about your neighborhood and community and how the community is involved in your organization.
Sure. So Chicago is the city of neighborhoods. We like to say that about ourselves. And we have 70 plus neighborhoods. We are about as far south as you can get before you go into South Suburb. And the way that it's drawn, there are neighborhoods that are a little bit further south than us, but they're, either west or east of us. We're the farthest south where we are on the map before going into a southern suburb. We are the West Pullman neighborhood. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you've heard of the Pullman Porters and the Pullman neighborhood, which are the train cars that were created, and the neighborhood that was created for the people who were building the train cars. So we're just west of that neighborhood. Our community is pretty involved. When we first started building it out, we were the new people in the neighborhood, and lots of people stopped and asked us what the heck we were doing. And there were several people who had a little bit of a reservation about what we were doing, and let us know that if we had an open farm, that would encourage people to come and just take whatever they needed or wanted, or destroy it or whatever. And then we had the chickens out there as well, and had a couple of offers of buying the chickens, so kind of formed their own ownership of it too. And they felt like the farm was theirs as well because it's in their neighborhood. And that's essentially what we wanted to happen, because we also depend on volunteers to help us run the farm. And, until we get to a place where we can hire, our small staff, it's essentially a community farm, a community urban farm. And people now love seeing what we're growing and then coming over and picking out what they want to eat, and then letting everybody know that they are eating something that was just picked that day. There's a type of novelty for, I think, a lot of people in the city or in larger cities about being able to eat something that they just harvested. And it's something that we don't often get to do because we're going to grocery stores, right? And while we may go to a grocery store and shop and then immediately come home and prepare whatever we purchase at the grocery store, that produce was not picked that day. And there's a sense of wonder and marvel about that for a lot of people. And I want that to stick around, but I also want, people in urban areas to become used to that. You know what I mean? Where
Mhm.
it's not something that is so far away or such a fantastical idea. It's something that they could see happening. And that's our mission, is to grow gardeners. Even though we run an urban farm, the nonprofit grows gardeners, and we want more people growing in their backyards or in their homes through aquaponics or hydroponics, or on their balconies or patios or whatever. We want more people doing this, and we want more people not to be so afraid to do it, because that's usually the reservation. I have a black thumb. People love saying that to me, right? You can't teach me how to grow any food or flowers or anything. I have a black thumb. And then they become growers in their own right, and then they become our biggest cheerleaders, inviting more of their friends and families into our community. And it's just amazing to see.
Mhm. Natasha, you were talking about growing growing gardeners. And I know you said earlier that you homeschool your kids. And a lot of us either got pushed into homeschooling or supporting virtual learning in this past year. And I know our family really struggled with it. And I won't say I homeschooled, because I definitely mostly just told people to get off their screens or on their screens when normally I'm telling them to get off, and just making sure they were actually doing what their teacher said. But I guess my question is, how does homeschooling work for your family, and what led to that decision for you?
Homeschooling is not as, I don't want to be flippant with it, but I think when we get out of the mindset of having to do it a certain way, we tend to be better teachers. And I spent a very large part of my early homeschooling years attempting to emulate what happened in classrooms because I loved school when I was younger. I loved the aspect of being there and pushing all of this knowledge into my head, right? And then school changed a lot after I was done with everything, undergrad, high school, elementary school. It became a lot more business focused rather than speaking to the child, I think, right? But teachers, I have a ton of respect for them because in order to facilitate the education of 20 plus children over and over and over again every single year and connecting with them and everything is a feat. You would think that because my children came from my DNA, I would know how to do these things. And I did not the very first couple of years. What we do is a variation of Montessori and unschooling. So a lot of it is led by what they are interested in learning with the towers of education, reading, arithmetic, and other things built in naturally. But we kind of learn what they want to learn, and we go for it that way with us teaching still, how to add and subtract and all of those other things. And I'm not trying to build geniuses at all. I'm trying to build folks who love being curious and who enjoy learning things rather than feeling like they're being forced to learn. That does not mean though that we don't get groans when it's time for them to wake up and go to school. But I feel like my kids are a lot more kid-like in general rather than forced to be adults in certain aspects and then relegated back to being kids when they get out of a certain environment. And we keep flip-flopping them instead of allowing them to enjoy their childhoods and enjoy the silly things in life. And we've had people state that they're very surprised that my 13-year-old still loves certain things because a lot of 13-year-olds feel like they're above those certain subjects or whatever. And it's just about them having the permission to still be children because adulthood comes at you fast and sometimes it's not so fun.
Yeah, it lasts a long time.
It's not so fun.
So many years of being an adult, right?
Yeah. And I also think that with homeschooling them, I've unlocked the ability to still have that joy of learning and that joy of liking things just because I like them rather than having to have permission to like it or to learn more about it. It gives me a lot more authority over that. And it's nice. It is not easy. And I don't want anybody thinking that it is. Being in charge of the education of somebody is work. And especially if, at some point in time, they will think of a higher education like a trade school or a vocational, school or college in general. That's a lot to put on yourself, but it needs to be something I think that's fun so that they can always be willing to absorb the information and like learning. Like there's no reason to have to be stuck, somewhere and not like what you're learning at all.
Natasha, one of the big pluses I see for homeschooling too, or just, more family-centered learning is the ability to tailor how kids learn things to things that they're interested in. I know so many people who said, well, my kid doesn't like reading. And then you look at the books they're being given and they're crap.
Yes.
And I'm just like, well, this book is terrible. Like,
yes,
nobody wants to read this, or being able to teach your kids out on the farm. I know for myself, being more of a kinetic learner, someone who learns by doing, that sitting in a desk all day is never going to work for me.
No, it's a fantastic thing. And you brought up an interesting point with the reading. I know a lot of people who feel like graphic novels are not real books. And they absolutely are. And they also serve a great purpose to, as a catalyst to get kids to books that may be more challenging. You never know. It's a way where instead of forcing them to read books that I've chosen, even though there are some things where I'm like, listen, we're all reading this so that we can discuss the themes in it. And you're gonna do it because it'll expand your brain. But there are times where we've had to rely on people who know it better than me. And typically those are librarians. And they can connect with my children by asking the right questions. And that's what they went to school for. So they know what questions to ask right off the bat. And trusting people who know better than I do has also been something that's been fantastic for the homeschooling process. Just knowing I don't know everything. I'm not, my background's in biology. That's what I went to school for. I'm a science type person who loved to read, but I don't know things. I don't spend my weekends reading advanced copies and learning technique and all of that stuff to ask questions about it. So yeah, I said it's nice being able to lean on the professionals for that.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's so much gatekeeping of what is real books. And I fully support not ingesting things that are just really badly written, but it's ridiculous to think that there's like a set number of words that makes it a real book, or a set topic that makes it a real book. And if your kid or yourself is enjoying it and getting some sense of wonder or engagement or relaxation or whatever out of it, then cool.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to read just to improve ourselves.
Right. It can be fun, right? It can be even the really bad books. And it's sometimes fun to discuss. My twin daughter read a book and she learned the wonderful thing that we call hate reading. Mm-hmm. the rage reading, the rage finishing of a book, where you absolutely either hate the characters or hate the theme or hate, the plot. But you got to finish it to see if it's just as bad as you thought that it was going to be at the end. And she's done a couple of books like that. And she's like, but what was the purpose? And I said, well, it allowed somebody to be creative in a way that they thought was great. Right. And at some point, somebody connected with that book, even if you didn't. And that's the joy of all of that. Even when it comes back to farming, I bet you didn't think that we could connect that with farming. But there's always a way to connect with a person, whether you're a dairy farmer or a farmer that only, grows commodity crop, or, a cannabis farmer or a hemp farmer. There's a way for you to connect with someone at all times, at all levels. And it makes the purpose of that even greater, I think, because something that you started from a little tiny seed is now affecting different lives around you, not just yours and not just, your immediate families. It's connecting you and rooting you in your place in this world. And that's kind of powerful.
Well, Natasha, I feel like you just defined the entire reason that we're doing this podcast. I know for myself, like, it's so easy to get in the headspace of, farmers like me, people like me. And it can be really hard to connect with other people, but we all know what it's like to lose a crop or to lose livestock, or, and if you don't, you probably are either ridiculously lucky or in your first season.
Yes.
Because shit happens. That's just the way this works. But I feel like we've become so attuned as a society, as human beings. I don't know how much of it's just human nature to look for ways that we're different. And I know I realized a couple weeks ago that reading something about cotton farming, and I have absolutely zero idea how cotton grows. I know it's water intensive, but I realized I have no idea what the growing season is like, or what the, how it's done. But I feel like I have a pretty good grip on how those farmers feel about what they're doing, and about a lot of challenges that they're facing, and about everything that's bigger than their actual crop. And so I feel like we can all connect on that that part of things.
Yes, for sure. It's even when we don't connect in any other way, right?
Yeah.
And if there's a community that showcases all of the differing ideology and thought processes, farmers are, yeah, that's a large sample.
Yeah.
For sure. Yet we all want to be respected as folks who connect people through food.
And I think it's such a marvelous opportunity because it becomes impossible to other people when you know somebody from that group. And once you've found a connection with that person, it is so much harder to say, well, they're not like me. You know, several years ago, I went to Honduras and was on a trip with a volunteer group and was sort of the token farmer on the group. And we were visiting farmers and, you know, talking to folks that I literally could not speak to, but how much connection we still found on, you know, they were looking at books about composting and how much we were able to communicate about composting without actually being able to use any words, and how differently I saw how much of what was happening in their country, you know, once there's that connection of things that we do have in common. And especially once you start, you know, having families, you know, there's just that much more connection to other folks.
So what projects do you have coming up? I mean, you talked a little bit about a potential headquarters, but what other projects do you have on the horizon? Where do you sell your produce? And what are some of your long-term goals? So tell us about some of those things.
Oh, so much exciting stuff coming up. So it's finally September right now as of this recording, right? Next month, we will be hosting our second annual We Sow, We Grow Summit, which is a summit that connects gardeners and growers globally. Look at that alliteration. And it's a 3-day virtual summit where we cover everything from seed to table. And it is one of the things that I'm most proud of in regard to the nonprofit is being able to connect people and kind of create these friendships that we were just talking about and these connections with folks. And one of the things that makes us quite unique is we're not just Chicago centric. So while we teach in real life in the city of Chicago, we have always been a virtual educational source. And that was something that I did on purpose because number one, Chicago is very, very saturated with urban farms and urban farmers and urban gardeners. Nobody necessarily needed another one in the city, but it's nice to have them in every area of the city. However, there are lots of people who don't have those resources all over the world and don't have people that they can connect with and ask questions and get an immediate answer. So the summit was built from something that I've wanted to do since about our third season in the nonprofit. But then I had a family member pass away, and then the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic didn't stop. So we swung around and did it just virtually because we were used to it anyway. And we hosted our first one last September, and it went off very well. So we have that coming up. Tickets will be available September 15th. You will be able to head to our site, WeSowWeGrow.org, to purchase your tickets or to register. And you can also find us on Eventbrite and Facebook and Twitter, all under We Sow We Grow. We don't change our name at all. That is what's filling my head right now. Also, garlic planting season is coming up for us Northerners. I can just smell all the hardneck garlics that I'm going to be getting into the ground. We have about 25 pounds of garlic coming that we need to be putting into the soil in early fall, and it makes me giddy. I know a lot of people won't understand that, but there's just fresh garlic. Come on now. Garlic is amazing. So that's what we have coming up right away. We also have our fundraising for our headquarters, and anyone can help us with that, whether or not you're in the community. We are a registered 501c3, and we are one of the nonprofits on Facebook or Instagram that you can dedicate a birthday to. You can also choose to do a fundraiser just because, just because it's Tuesday. If you want to do a fundraiser for us, we appreciate each and everyone who does that. And we've been connected with people far and wide who have chosen to pick us as their nonprofit of choice. And it makes my heart grow several levels, kind of like the Grinches did during the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It makes me very, very happy. That is going on, and we do sell our produce, but we do not ship anywhere. So if you are in the city of Chicago and you want to come and visit us, we're right on the corner of 120th and Union Avenue. But that's about it. It's about all that my husband and I can handle, considering we're the two employees right now, full-time employees of the nonprofit. When we do get our larger staff, we will be able to, accommodate the community a lot better throughout the entire week. But for now, we work with what we have, and we've been doing very well. And our community has been, understanding of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm not sure how you find time to sleep amidst all of those things.
Oh, believe me, I am a huge proponent of naps and taking your butt to bed because a sleepy farmer is not a nice farmer, and we don't want anybody out there.
Yeah. I already had a nap this morning.
I did too, Arlene. Natasha, I'm wondering, you and I had talked a little earlier about ag policy and urban farmers, and there were a lot of issues I had never considered, as someone who does benefit from a lot of federal programs. I'm wondering how we can shape ag policy to be more advantageous for urban farmers and other, smaller producers like you. I know, you and I had spoken about the lack of tax write-offs, which is a huge boon for larger commodity farms, and things like our farm gets payments from the natural resources conservation programs for putting in prairie grass. And I'm guessing you probably don't have a lot of room to do that on your, on your quarter acre.
We don't. There are farms
like
here though
$8 a year or something. So
yeah, there are farms who in the city of Chicago who do that. We don't have the space, and it's not fiscally advantageous for us. Yeah. And anybody who says that they get into farming and don't care about making money, I'm willing to call them a liar to their face. And I know that sounds very blunt, but there's no way that you do this type of work only to, provide food. And that's not me becoming rich at all, but we still need to make money in order to provide for the community. If we're being honest, we haven't taken a salary since we started the nonprofit, and quite often we pay the nonprofit to to run it. But we still need to be able to function, right? And you can't function without money. So we do want people to understand that just because we live in urban areas does not mean that we aren't farming. And I did a takeover on a platform, and I had a lot of pushback from quite a few people about calling what I have a farm, and there were several comments that stated, well, that's not a farm, that's just a really large garden. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's a quarter acre. So anybody,
anyone who says that's not a farm has never grown a quarter acre of vegetables, because it doesn't look like that much until you're weeding.
No, or weeding and harvesting, and planting. That's a lot of planting that goes on. And when people also hear, we have to do that by hand. We don't get to hop into a large, equipment and do precision planting at all. We don't get to do that. We have to do everything by hand. And that's challenging, for a lot of people to even think about.
Yep.
So that policy and ag stuff to include us. But the good thing is the USDA has provisions for urban farmers now. And we get to get a vendor. Yeah, we have get to have vendor IDs and, put in requests for grants to help us build hoop houses and things of that nature. But we still have to get through the red tape of the cities that we live in.
Yeah.
And because a lot of our city isn't zoned for farmland, that's where we have to kind of finalize and perfect, especially since a lot of larger cities, a lot of the space that they have open that would be perfect to grow on is deemed uninhabitable by the environmental agency because things have leached into the soil.
Mhm.
And a lot of the people who are making the rules don't understand that you can put barriers up and build up from that and still grow in either raised beds or in greenhouses or in hoop houses. You can do things like that and build your soil and build healthy, medium to grow in without having to ever touch any of the soil or anything below the barrier. And that's a large fight that we're having. And there's still a lot of stuff that I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know until I get there. Right. So going to meetings and kind of networking and making sure that I'm listening to all of the information that's being given is almost like it's not even almost, it is another full-time job. And it sometimes becomes a little bit discouraging and disheartening to hear that we thought we were making headway and we're really 2 or 3 years behind where we thought we were supposed to be or where we were. But like I said, I'm stubborn. And we're 6 years in. This was something that was dropped in my heart when we moved over here. And I feel with every fiber of my being that this is the service that I'm supposed to provide for my community. And it's all about taking that desire to change the world for the better and keeping at it and not letting all of the, issues that may come to try to block me stop me from that. And there have been a lot of days where, I've cried. I have quit. I probably quit like 3 times a month where I just say I'm done with the whole thing. And, my husband's become very used to it. And, the next day we get back up and we get back to work. But it's when people are thinking of that, we have to think of all scales of farms and all aspects of farming. And Twitter becomes an interesting space too when I'm involved in ag discussions. And it becomes a space where I realize that I have a way tougher spine and way thicker skin than I thought that I had, because I'm still able to hold my own with a lot of people who have been doing this for generations and still understanding we all have a lot to learn, about each other, about the types of farming that we do, and about the crop that we provide for our communities. And I'm lucky enough to be able to do several different crops instead of just one entire or 4, I can grow, like I'm growing jack-o'-lanterns right now and totally geeking out at the fact that I'm growing jack-o'-lanterns on a 1/4 acre and that the vines are spreading to the sidewalks of Chicago. And nobody in my neighborhood thinks that it's weird. It's just like, oh yeah. And that's Farmer Natasha's. That's my nickname now around here.
Yeah.
I found out.
We'll just move to the side of the road.
Yeah,
Leave the
yeah.
vines where they are.
We'll just go around.
Yeah.
A couple of people have also learned that pumpkin vines hurt a lot.
Oh yeah, they're
and
spiky.
and they don't want to touch those at all. We learned our lesson this year because we've done variants of pumpkin and squash. Jack-o'-lantern vines are aggressive and but we are so excited about growing that. And then we got trellises put in with cattle panel. Like there's still that level of excitement for me where getting up and doing this every day is new. It feels new. And there are days where I'm absolutely spent because it's hard work and working in the heat and working when, it's only you doing it and nobody else. It's a lot. So I can even respect that level of farming, even if it's a smaller area. But we're all doing the same work. We're just doing it in different ways and in different cities. That's all.
I think there's so much freedom in being that crazy farmer up the street too.
I think so too. It's fun.
For my husband, he's the 5th generation here, and so people know who he is, and there's definitely more of an expectation about how he's going to do things, but they don't know me, and my hair is blue, at least right now. And I mean, they already assume I'm nuts, so I can do anything I want at this point because they just kind of look at me and, I mean, like we have a cow who's a free martin, was twinned with a bull, which normally makes them infertile, and she's had, I don't know, 5 or 6 calves already, and she'll feed 2 calves at a time. She fed 6 calves her first lactation, and people keep saying, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That'll never work. And I'm like, well, don't tell her that, because she hasn't noticed yet that it's not going to work. And, I think there's so much power in just being able to ignore everything that's not going to work, because, I mean, the worst that's going to happen is it won't work and they'll be right.
Right.
I mean,
you'll be in the
yeah.
same spot that you were in before you attempted it. And that's a lot too, where we heard a lot of that when we were building out the farm. Oh, this isn't going to last. People are going to come and take everything out because they don't know what the heck it is. And, you're not going to get any support, and all. We heard all of it. It could have ruined us if I was left to my own devices and listening to that type of stuff, and not having, when we started, it was, my twins weren't even 5 yet. And my daughter, my youngest daughter, she is the mini farmer. So she has made it her mission. This is not on us, to learn, how the plants look when they're germinating, to what they look like when they're fully growing, and she can go and identify. And she could do this before she was reading well. So, she knew what a tomato plant looked like. And if she was confused, she knew enough to rub the leaves and then sniff her finger. So she could tell if it was a tomato or a basil plant, things of that nature. And this is also why I love homeschooling, because there are no rules at all. And with being the type of farmer that I am, there are no rules as to what I can and can't grow. Now, there may be rules about the type of livestock I can keep, which is understandable, right? Because you don't want just loads of poop in urban communities, because that could get a little bit worrisome. But if I want to grow corn, which I do, or watermelon, which I do, or garlic, I can. And as long as I can figure out a proper way to do it, then it can be done. And if I try it 1 year and fail, that doesn't always mean that I did it wrong. It just means that there was something that was off about it. And I think you made mention earlier in the podcast where you would challenge people who would say that something about this was perfect. I think that was the sentiment. And you would think that they were either a first-year farmer or just super lucky. And I wish you could have seen me nodding my head, because the first year that we grew, everything was perfect. Like everything was perfect. We didn't have squash vine borers. We didn't have a ton of caterpillar worms. We didn't have rabbits at all on the.
You got rain when you needed it.
Yes, and everything was perfect. There were no drought conditions, and it set me up for the biggest okie doke that I've ever had before in my life, because that very next season we were in a drought season. And then the year after that, or 2 years after that, we had nothing but rain all season long, and everything got drowned out. And that's another thing that policy I would love for it to cover, that if we got things in the ground by a certain time, that we would be reimbursed for the seed that we planted. And urban farmers can't. I don't think, my knowledge as of right now does not think that we can have lay claim to those types of funds.
Like a crop insurance or something is not
But it would be nice for sure. But it's that's the joy. I can grow anything I want. And when we finally do acquire the land that we're looking at, we want to put in fruit trees, because I am slightly jealous of all of the people in the city right now who are growing peaches and apples, and I don't have any. So yeah, that's my next large plan.
The big excitement this fall is that the 2 apple trees that I planted 3 years ago finally have more than like 2 apples on them. So
see, it makes a big deal, right?
Yeah, I'm itching to pick them, but I'm just going to wait a few more weeks and let them really get nice and red. But I'll grab each one that falls off at this point. But I'm holding out.
Arlene, I'm going to set up a Zoom chat for you and the boy child, because he keeps, we drive past the apple trees on the way home from school every day. And every day he looks out the window and he goes, "Apples, mommy?" apples ready? And I say, no, not quite
How
yet.
about today?
And he'll, we'll go in the house and he sets his bag down and he puts his boots on and he marches out there and he'll kind of poke at any he can reach with his finger and he'll say, apples are red. And I'll say, yeah, but they're not ready yet, buddy. Tomorrow? I'm like, buddy, I will tell you when they're ripe. Like, I'm not messing with you. Like, you will
They're
have
right
apples
there.
when they're ripe, baby. I understand. I bought him some apples and he won't eat them. He's like, no, I grew my own.
Yeah.
I'm not eating these.
Yeah, that's right.
Child. He also went down and told the neighbors how to chop their corn silage last night, though. So.
Oh, good. So he's
on
going to
that.
manage everyone else's farms too.
Yeah.
So Natasha, normally Katie asks this question because she's got a bit of a fair obsession. So the question we've been asking some of.
I was waiting for you to say fair fetish, honestly.
The question we've been asking some of our guests is, if you were to enter a contest at the county fair or state fair, what one could you dominate?
Oh, goodness.
And it could be a real or made up.
Oh, that's a fun question. And one that I do sew bags. So the real one would be sewing amazing bags. And I think I could blue ribbon there.
Nice.
I could also possibly blue ribbon in ideas started on a whim.
Oh, I would challenge you on that, Natasha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Where I think now everybody in my family, they say I get this look in my eye and they just know that things are about to start happening. And I'm going to start volunteering. And one of the biggest compliments that I've gotten from my husband is, I don't know how you do it, but whenever I think that something's not going to work out, you pull something out of your back pocket and it blows me away. And I don't technically like working that way, but it's the way that I do. And it's probably unhealthy. So don't do it. Don't take this as a sign to start working in that manner, but it's the way. It's ideas and having them and getting people united in a way that I didn't even know that I could do. And the summit is one of those very things, like connecting with people. I don't have an issue with approaching people who are considered famous. Folks are like, so you'd go up to the president of the United States? And I say, well, I'm assuming so, because he's a person just like I am, barring Secret Service.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't do it in a way that would cause you to get arrested.
Right.
But
Tackling
there was a clear path.
That's who I am. I am a ideas person and a people person. And I love talking to people and I love getting to know a little bit about them until I am peopled out. And then,
I'm really looking forward to the husband episode where we have them on to talk about ideas we've had, because I feel like that's going to be a long and fraught episode, and I think we'll need to call Natasha's husband in on that one too.
Yeah, he'll have to write all of them down.
I think that I don't know how you do it is actually a pretty great compliment, but I'm the same kind of person, so maybe that's not a great sense from me. I know too, Natasha, one of the biggest challenge I had with starting this group and starting the podcast was, being paired with Carrie for mentorship, and that she was the one person I wanted to work with, and having to wrap my head around asking her to work with me. And I was so afraid that she'd laugh at me or something, and just realizing how stupid that was, that the worst thing she's going to do is say no. And that just having that confidence to connect with people that way and to be very open with folks is so powerful. If you can make yourself do it, or just enjoy doing it, like it sounds like you do, because I am not really a people person, but if you have enough big ideas, eventually you have to start letting other people help you with them.
Yes. And now that is very hard for me, delegating and letting go of babies of my ideas, letting go of them, because I'm always afraid that other folks won't give it the attention that it deserves or the respect that it deserves. And for them, it may be just work, but for me, it's a piece of my heart, that is going out into the world. So it's an interesting line to walk for sure.
Well, I feel like the other thing is to really find the enablers in life. Like my husband said no horses on the farm, and our vet said mules aren't horses, which I really appreciate. And then like I'm not allowed to go to the livestock auctions by myself anymore, or any sort of livestock sales, which is valid. And we have a high school kid who works for us, and he said, well, if you and I went to a sale together and and I paid for it, that wouldn't be like you buying anything. You could just tell me what I should buy, and then if you just gave me money later for something else, that wouldn't be the same as you going to a livestock sale. And I'm like,
yeah, those friends
A,
are
I
dangerous.
like how you think, and B,
yeah,
you guys
my
are
friends are dangerous that way.
Yeah.
My friends are definitely dangerous that way, and I think my husband's catching on.
Yeah, it's bad when they catch on, but probably just as well, I guess.
But their lives would be so boring without us.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure my husband's life was a lot more straightforward before we met, but I think he likes the challenge. Maybe not.
Yes. We are character builders.
Yeah, I'm glad he's going to hear this, and I'm going to leave that in, that you said it was character building for him.
I will say this. I believe that you asked me where everyone can find us and connect with us, correct?
Yes. And if you want to remind him to give you money.
Okay. So we sow, we grow everywhere. If you want to get connected to us on Instagram, which we're very active, Instagram and Facebook, just tag us or use the hashtag We Sow We Grow. You can donate directly to us by going to our site, WeSowWeGrow.org. And there is a huge donate button, because that's what nonprofits do. And you can click it and it'll take you directly to the space where you can donate. There are also donate buttons everywhere on Facebook and Instagram as well on our profile. Our second annual summit will be taking place October 15th through the 17th. That's a Friday through a Sunday. And registration will open on Wednesday, September 15th. And you can sign up for our newsletter to be alerted. You will be the first folks alerted if you are newsletter subscribers. And it's just me, so be nice. And we have some volunteers helping run our social media, so be nice to them too, because they're not as old as I am. So rolling their eyes and ignoring people doesn't always work for them like it works for me. That's essentially everywhere we are. We honestly appreciate every single quarter, nickel, dime that we get. A lot of people feel like they can't do anything if they can't give us, hundreds of dollars. $5 works, $1 works, because it's $1 more than we had before you gave. So we appreciate each and every donation that comes through. And we also love it when you all share our mission and our nonprofit with your friends and family.
Oh, one of my favorite podcasts was talking about dealing with social media trolls the other day. And she said when she gets a rude private message, she starts typing, so the typing bubble comes up. And she'll do that for a while, and then she blocks them, because she figures that way they just have to wonder about what she was going to say. Yeah.
It's so fun. I am so very happy that I am not growing up actively in the age of TikTok and social media, and that I was able to be a child without it being recorded all the time, or without feeling the need to record it all the time. And people who spend their days trolling people or making other people's lives miserable, or attempting to, they make me sad. And, I always hope that they will find some sort of love that they're searching for, because they're not getting any hate from me. We block quickly. I don't do that. It's a quick block for me. And I don't care about what what they were saying or anything. If it's not who I am, I don't care. We just block. And I think other people should too.
So Natasha, our next seg is the cussing and discussing.
I can start. So last night I took my 13-year-old to his first rabbit agility 4-H meeting. He's not the most sporty of people, and our rabbit is not very sporty, but we've been looking for activities now that things are starting to open up a little bit. So there was a 4-H club starting up, so we decided to bring our rabbit and our boy to the first meeting. So there were, I don't know, like 10 or 12 kids, and in the email that came out before, you're supposed to bring food and water and a cage for your animal, and it explicitly said that all the children were responsible for making sure that the rabbits stayed apart from each other, and that so far they had not had any babies result from previous rabbit agility clubs. So it was so cute watching these kids go around and be like, is your rabbit a boy or a girl? And so they were letting some of the girls sniff each other, but being very careful about keeping any rabbit breeding from happening at the event. So our rabbit, who was quite large, did not really go over any of the jumps, but she was good at tunnels. She would hang out in the tunnel and then eventually would find her way through. So it's something to work on.
Rabbit agility sounds like one of the most delightfully charming things I have heard of in a long time. And I think I'll add it to my list of things that are always good.
It's quite cute.
I'm not having love for the rabbits lately, mostly because of all the rabbits we have on our farm now. And I used to have a rabbit growing up. Well, I used to have a rabbit growing up. I had an albino rabbit that my mom was terrified of. It was a gift from an aunt. So my rabbit love is not as proficient as it used to be, but that does sound adorable for sure. Rabbit Agility Club. That is something.
Sure is. I'll record some of their achievement day when they go to the fair in a few weeks and get some footage for the backyard language group. Natasha, do you have anything to cuss or discuss? Any good, bad, or ugly that's gone on in the last few weeks?
Oh gosh, the heat wave. You would think that as someone who loves growing their own food, that I would appreciate the sun in all of its glory. I do not. And as many times as I've told people to stay hydrated and recognize symptoms of heat exhaustion or heat stroke, I had heat exhaustion last Saturday, and it was not a fun weekend recovering at all. And I respect the sun a lot. I do not like the sun leaning on my shoulders or on my back the way that it seemed to have done last Saturday. So that's the only issue that I've had this year with farming for myself, other than the very deep tan that I also have, which is kind of amazing. I don't think I've ever felt so sick and so helpless as having a heat exhaustion. And apparently I'm not a very good patient. we don't want to subject the family to that any longer.
They don't want it to happen again either.
So I get water brought out to me whenever I go out on the farm. Hey, you forgot your water. We're not doing this. We're not doing this again. We're not doing this again. So that's the bad. The good is just every day above the ground is a good day for me. I'm happy about that.
Arlene, do you just want to wrap up what we've got?
Yeah,
I'm done.
That's perfect for the segment.
Yeah.
Yes, tech issues. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. So on behalf of Katie and myself, I want to thank you so much, Natasha, for joining us today. And it's been great learning about you and your family and all that you're doing. So we would direct everyone to check the show notes and to follow Natasha on social media to find out what's happening with her next. And as usual, you can also follow us on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, and you can join our private Facebook group on Facebook, obviously. So it's called Barnyard Language. You can put it in a request to join, and that's where you can connect with other families, other farmers, receive support, chat with other people, maybe see some videos of rabbits doing jumps, who knows. And you can also send us an email if you want at barnyardlanguage@gmail.com. We love your submissions for our cussing and discussing segment. If you want to send us an audio file or just send us an email, we can read it out for you. Until next time, may your hay stay dry and your children stay dry.
Thank you for joining us today on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, we encourage you to support us by becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/barnyardlanguage to make a small monthly donation to help cover the costs of making the show.
Please rate and review the podcast and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Barnyard Language, and on Twitter, we are Barnyard Pod. If you'd like to connect with other farming families, you can join our private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We're always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch. We are a proud member of the Positively Farming Media Podcast Network.